Let me ask you something. What if the only thing standing between you and total freedom was an impossible barrier, an ocean of problems, and behind you, your past, chasing you down, threatening to destroy you? Sounds like a nightmare, right? But this is exactly what happened in one of the most astonishing rescue missions in history, the Exodus. In today's video, we're diving into the Bible's most dramatic and mind-blowing rescue mission, a story of impossible odds, relentless faith, and one man who defied an empire with nothing more than God's promise. Before we jump in, don't forget to subscribe to City on a Mountain for deep dives into powerful biblical stories that continue to inspire us today. All right, let's get into it. Egypt, a nation in bondage. First, let's talk about Egypt, the ancient superpower. Picture it: grand palaces, towering pyramids, an army that could crush anyone in its path. But beneath the surface of this empire was a darker story. The Israelites, God's chosen people, had been living in Egypt for over 400 years, but not as free citizens. They were slaves. Imagine the brutality. Forced labor every day, building cities and monuments under the scorching sun, while being treated as less than human. Children born into slavery, knowing nothing but chains and harsh whips. The Israelites had no hope of freedom. Until God stepped in. This isn't just a story about an ancient nation. It's a reminder that no matter how impossible our circumstances look, there's always hope. Moses, an unlikely hero. Now, who could lead these people to freedom? A warrior? A politician? Nope. God chose someone entirely unexpected: Moses. Here's the thing. Moses wasn't your stereotypical hero. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace as an adopted Egyptian prince. But deep down, he knew he was one of the Israelites. One day, in a fit of rage, he killed an Egyptian who was beating an Israelite, and because of that, he fled Egypt to live as a shepherd in the desert. And there he stayed for years, until the burning bush. Here's where things get interesting. Moses, just living his quiet shepherd life, saw a bush on fire that wasn't burning up. Imagine walking by a fire that doesn't consume its fuel. You'd be shocked, right? Moses was too. But what happened next was even more shocking. God spoke to him, not just any conversation either, but a command that would change the course of history. Go back to Egypt and free my people. Moses wasn't thrilled at first. In fact, he was terrified. He wasn't a skilled speaker, and he definitely didn't see himself as a leader. But this is one of the key lessons in the story. God doesn't look for the most qualified person. He looks for someone willing to say yes. And that's exactly what Moses did, facing Pharaoh, the ultimate showdown. Moses returned to Egypt, but it wasn't exactly a warm welcome. He and his brother Aaron went straight to Pharaoh, the most powerful man on the planet, and delivered God's message: "Let my people go." Pharaoh laughed in their faces. This wasn't just a political standoff. It was a showdown between Egypt's so-called gods and the one true God. Pharaoh, believing himself to be a god, wasn't about to let his free labor force walk out of Egypt. And so began one of the most intense back and forths in biblical history. God unleashed 10 plagues on Egypt. And each plague wasn't just a random disaster. They were calculated attacks on Egypt's gods. The Nile turned into blood, a strike against Hapi, the god of the Nile. The infestation of frogs, an attack on Hecate, the goddess of fertility, who had the head of a frog. The locusts, the hail, the darkness. Every plague showed that the God of Israel was more powerful than any Egyptian deity. But Pharaoh's heart hardened. No matter how devastating the plagues, he refused to let the Israelites go. That is, until the final plague, the death of the firstborn. 4. The Passover, a moment of divine protection. Let's pause here for a moment because this is a crucial turning point. Before the final plague, God gave the Israelites a specific set of instructions. Sacrifice a lamb and paint its blood on the doorposts of their homes. That night, the angel of death would pass over Egypt, taking the life of every firstborn, but sparing the homes marked with the blood. This wasn't just about physical safety. It was a divine symbol. The blood of the lamb foreshadowed a future rescue mission, one that would involve another lamb whose sacrifice would save humanity from sin. That night, the cries of Egypt filled the air as the firstborn sons of Egypt, including Pharaoh's own son, were taken. Pharaoh, broken and devastated, finally relented. He ordered the Israelites to leave Egypt. The Exodus, walking out of slavery. Can you imagine the scene? Over 1 million Israelites, young and old, packed up their belongings and marched out of Egypt, a land that had held them in bondage for generations. They were finally free, or so they thought. As they made their way through the wilderness, news reached them. Pharaoh had changed his mind. He had sent his army, the most fearsome military force on earth, to chase them down and bring them back. This is where things get really intense. The Israelites found themselves trapped between the Red Sea in front of them and Pharaoh's army closing in behind them. Panic set in. They thought they were free, only to be faced with certain death. But God had another miracle in store: the parting of the Red Sea, the ultimate rescue. At the height of their fear and desperation, God spoke to Moses again. "Stretch out your hand over the sea." And what happened next was nothing short of miraculous. The waters of the Red Sea parted, forming walls of water on either side, and the Israelites crossed on dry ground. Just imagine walking between two massive walls of water, waves frozen in time, fish visible through the clear blue sea. It must have been surreal. Pharaoh's army followed them into the sea, but once the Israelites were safely across, the waters collapsed, swallowing the Egyptian forces whole. This wasn't just an escape, it was a complete and total victory. God didn't just free the Israelites, He destroyed the very forces that tried to enslave them. The meaning behind the mission. So, what does this all mean? Why is this story still so powerful today? The Exodus isn't just a story about a nation being freed from physical slavery. It's a metaphor for our spiritual journeys. Just as the Israelites were trapped in Egypt, we all face our own forms of bondage, whether it's fear, addiction, or guilt. And just as God provided a way for them, He provides a way for us. Moses' story reminds us that we don't have to be perfect to be part of God's plan. We just have to be willing. It's a story of faith, of trusting in the face of impossible odds. It's a reminder that no matter how trapped we feel, God always has a rescue mission in the works. Think about this. If God can part an entire sea, what can't He do in your life? If this story inspires you and you want to hear more incredible biblical truths that can change your life, hit that subscribe button and join us at City on a Mountain. Each week, we bring you more of these powerful stories that still speak to us today. Thanks for watching, and remember, No matter how impossible things seem, there's always a way through. Stay blessed, and we'll see you in the next video.